Strickland to me looks really awkward to fight. Like really awkward to fight. I feel like Strickland's style lends itself to having very close rounds. I will say, the version of Paulo Costa that I fought was silly good.
Yeah.
That was the best version I've ever seen of himself. So I like calling my family. I know, and I think about my family watching me when I'm in there. Like I picture my kids watching me when I'm in there and they're announcing my name and stuff. So
Strickland's come out. He's saying, "I want to wait. I'm next in line." Why don't you sit back and do the same approach?
mate, I got a lot of kids, mate. With a lot of kids comes a lot of bills, dude. So
I'm not surprised, motherfuckers. Tomorrow night, I'm gonna smash your boy, guys. My balls was hot. Who the fuck is that guy?
Is he fucking awesome? Yes, welcome to a new episode of Buiten de Kooi. For our English listeners, it's Outside the Cage. Today we are joined by already a legend, the former middleweight champ, Bobby Knuckles, aka Robert Whittaker, the Reaper. Has fought last weekend with a vicious knockout over one of the highest prospects in the middleweight division, and is back on the run for the title. Welcome, Robert, and thank you for your time.
no, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, man. So, Robert, let's get straight into it, man. How are you feeling after this win, man? I see you're back home. How do you feel?
Yeah, no, I feel outstanding. It's hard not to. All that work we put in, and then to have the result we did a few days ago, picture perfect, really. It means the world. It's outstanding, and to be able to come home healthy and not sore, and it's a different feeling.
Did you expect the fight to go this way?
Definitely not. Like it's one of those things you prepare for the worst but hope for the best. So obviously I hone my skill sets constantly to try to get results like this, to work the setups, to work the traps, to work the exploiting of weaknesses, right? But mate, it doesn't always go to plan because there's a moving piece, which is your opponent, and they're just not going to let you do things.
Yeah, because if we analyzed the fight last weekend when we recorded the weekly review, and what we noticed was at one point you see you're making some feints. Ikram moves his leg up, and from that on you knock them out. Is that something you watched before the fight, or you analyzed that at that moment?
It's not something I worked before, and as well as I didn't even see his leg go up. So it's more when we first started. Within the first minute, I was getting a lot of reads out of feinting, and when I was moving in with the left jab, and I was moving in and crowding him with the jab, I was getting a lot of reads on his left hand. He was throwing it out a lot, just trying to get it in my way. So after he did that a few times, I had picked that was a read, like that's something he does, and I committed to the 1-2 over the top, and yeah, the rest is history.
So I want to go back a bit to the moment when you heard about the switch of opponents. So obviously you're known as a fighter who says yes to everyone. I mean, you fought all the toughest guys in your division, and then you agreed to fight, the boogeyman, the scariest man for your division. And then prior to the fight, you hear, hey, Kamzat is out, but there's another guy you're going to fight. He's not very famous yet, but it's a prospect. How much film study were you able to do on Ikram Aliskerov?
Yeah, well, once the name was dropped to me, I understood that he was a prospect. Moving up into the division. I think a lot of people turned down the fight because they don't want to fight him. Like no one would fight him. So yeah, it was cool. I'm very thankful that he stood up, came to the plate. There's a bit of a level, increase when you get up to where I am in the ladder. So I appreciate him, taking the chance like that. But in terms of tape watching, once the name was given to me, I I went through his UFC fights, and obviously there's not too much there, and so it was a little hard. Plus, not to mention he had like very quick success in his UFC fights, so there wasn't too much to be gained there. But yeah, I had something to visualize during the week before the fight.
Yeah, you also mentioned that the moment you gave the uppercut, it flashed by with the uppercut Khamzat gave him. Is that something you do at the moment, or you participate on the way he moves? How does that go in your head at that moment?
So a big part of my game plan and how we kind of conduct ourselves in the gym is that we formulate how we fight so that our opponent has to worry about that. We like taking the fight to our opponents. We like dictating the pace, the timing, and the spacing of the fight. So I have a big focus on sharpening my skill sets and making them the best version they can be, so that when I go into the fight, I can take a fight to him that he has to worry about and adjust on the fly. And everything I do, all my experience, everything that I watch, it's all in the bank, right? It's all in the bank, so that when I was inside the octagon, I can remember things pop up. I train that rigorously. That is muscle memory at that point. It's all instinct. My body does things before I can think about it, because that's how hard and how many times you need to train things.
Speaking about focus, I wanna talk about your walkout, man, because I love your walkouts. You always come out with the hoodie, looking like you want to kill someone, like the guy owes you money, like he stole one of your video games. That's how you walk out. I love it, man. So, can you walk me through your walkout? Is there like a ritual you do, or what is going through your head when you walk into the octagon?
Yeah, honestly, I'm really in my own head. I'm trying to like psych myself up, understand that it's do or die, understand, like, get myself into the mentality that I'm walking out with zero intention to leave. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of mentality I'm walking in there. I'm either gonna win or die. That's the only level there is. So I'm in my own head trying to develop that, trying to like really cement that mentality walking out. But also I visualize like almost walls between me and everything else when I'm walking out, because I don't know, it just helps me visualize the crowd not getting to me. I don't know, like puts like a barrier between me and the crowd and everything else. It just helps me zone in. It's almost like blinders on a horse, right? It's like I'm there to do a job. It helps me zero in.
And from what moment do you switch on, like, okay, now I'm in fight mode? So because you say you zone out from walking from the dressing room to the cage, and is it you switch on as soon as you step into the cage, or is it prior to stepping into the cage?
It's well prior. So I'm kind of like tempering it the entire day. The entire day I'm like puttering, and then obviously the closer I get to the fight, the more intense that kind of mentality starts to build up. And then once I'm walking out, we're almost at peak. Once I'm in the octagon, I'm at peak. Like, yeah, gonna leave it all there type position.
Okay, so then of course you win the fight. It's an amazing moment. We see you do the post-fight interview. But can you walk us through what happens after the post-fight interview? Like, how do you celebrate such a win? And even we're in a foreign country, Saudi Arabia, how are you able to celebrate the win?
So celebrating a win straight after a fight, the first thing I do is try to, obviously I have to do all the media and stuff side of things with the UFC, but I like call on my family. I know, and I think about my family watching me when I'm in there. Like, I picture my kids watching me when I'm in there and they're announcing my name and stuff. So I understand that, like, the first thing I can do as soon as I can call them is the first thing I do. Like, I just want to see how they react, tell them I'm all right, tell them I'm going to come home and all the good stuff. And then usually I go to dinner. Like I go to dinner with the team. We get some greasy burgers somewhere, something like that. And just, spend time.
So I find it it's good to hear that you call your family at the moment you're done. But do you find it hard the moments you've lost to call them? Do you call them later on, or is that always a ritual that the first thing you do is call your family?
Yeah, they share my wins and they share my losses. That's just how it is. So it's more important to call my family on a loss because the world goes on.
Exactly.
You said, I don't know which interview, but recently you said you bring your kids to the UFC in Perth, UFC 305.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you'll bring your kids to your fight one day?
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to bring them to one of my fights before I wrap it up. I'd love that. I think that'd be pretty special. But for their first event, I'm going to be sitting next to them, which will be pretty cool.
So we won't see you at Perth. There's no chance we will see you at Perth.
Fighting wise, no. I'll be there. So you'll physically see me, but I'm not fighting. There's just too many things I have to get done now that I've gotten home that I totally forgot in the moment when I was over in Saudi. But I'm looking to get another fight before the end of the year for sure.
That's great to hear.
I mean, yeah, I can definitely understand. You've been pretty active. I think the Dreykus fight was about a year ago, International Fight Week. But speaking about that fight, it always seems like whenever you take a loss, you come back like 10 times stronger. Can you walk us through what you learned from the loss from Dreykus and how you've bounced back, like winning from Paulo Costa, beating him, and now knocking out Ikram?
A big thing when I lost to Dreykus was just I kind of let myself down, I feel. And I didn't like the mentality that I had surrounding that fight. I didn't like the training that I had put in for that fight. I didn't like my headspace when I walked out for that fight. I just wasn't happy with it. And, a big part of the camp with Costa and then moving from Costa into this Ikram fight, well, that was supposed to be Chimaev, was just doubling down on that headspace, and I feel like I did that. I feel like I took the reins again on my own headspace, and I've been getting some pretty good success since.
It's a great run again. It's weird to see because we always say in our podcast, even the last Adesanya fight, we said, yeah, we think Robert won. But that's a discussion you can have endlessly because it's a perception. You moved on. I think it's also do you feel like pressure when you fought Dreykus, because a lot of people were like, okay, but this is the end of Dreykus because he's fighting someone like Robert Whittaker?
Maybe like I've always found it easier to be an underdog than an overwhelming favorite, and I guess that's something I've had to kind of work through, right? I obviously when Ikram stepped in, I became the favorite, and there's more pressure involved when you're the favorite. Like everyone just expects you to walk over him, everyone expects you to smash him. So you almost feel like you have to live up to their expectations, which is silly, really, but it's a real thing, and I feel like I cracked the case this last one at the very least.
Exactly, you did.
Okay, so after we move on from Dreykus, obviously you have to fight with Paulo Costa, which was an amazing fight. And then another guy in your division, Sean Strickland, he fights Paulo Costa as well, but in a little bit of a different fight than you had with Paulo Costa. What do you think of the fight Strickland had with Costa? Drink the water, man. All good.
I'm thirsty, sorry, dude. Strickland to me looks really awkward to fight. And mayhap that had something to do with how the fight looked totally. I feel like Strickland's style lends itself to having very close rounds, which is kind of why there's always a debate, like why it's always kind of up in the air a little bit with the judges, but he looks awkward to fight. And you could see he was giving Paul Costa some trouble with that. But I also don't think, and I'm saying this, not understanding what it's like to fight Strickland. So like, I'm going to say Costa, in my opinion, didn't fight great, but maybe Strickland's style lent itself to shutting down his game. I don't know why Costa put his hands up for 5 rounds as well, especially when it wasn't a main event. That it seems like shooting himself in the foot a little bit. But yeah, I don't know.
It was also not the same Costa as we saw him fight with you. So it was a huge difference. But maybe it's also because you come into the cage and you have the mentality of winning or dying, and you show that in your fight style. And usually Sean says winning or dying, but then he's kind of calculated in the way he fights, and that could also be a trouble for a fighter, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say, the version of Paulo Costa that I fought was silly good.
Yeah.
That was the best version I've ever seen of himself. So, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Lucky me.
Yeah, man, it was a great fight. So speaking about Strickland, of course, everybody's asked you the question already. Do you want to fight Strickland? When are you going to fight Strickland? But Strickland's come out. He's saying, I want to wait. I'm next in line. So my question to you is, why don't you use that same strategy? Being like, because you say you want to be active this year. You want to still get a fight this year. Why don't you sit
100%.
back? Why don't you sit back and do the same approach?
Mate, I got a lot of kids, mate. With a lot of kids comes a lot of bills, dude. So
you got 5, right? 5 kids.
Yeah, 5 kids.
You're
So,
busy man.
yeah, there's bills to pay. There's bills to pay. I gotta. Plus, like, I want to fight. Like, that's what I want to do. It's fun. Every time I fight, I get better. I further my goals. And mate, I'm not gonna further my goals sitting on the sideline.
So we also wanted to discuss, because you're talking about your goals, we also wanted to discuss a part about looking back at your career. So from the start, and then going to the run to a championship, becoming a champ, falling back into being a contender. Can you tell us shortly how that process goes and how you feel and how you bounce back from that?
No one likes losing, but I do feel like it is the best way to grow. I do feel like that. I feel like the hardship and the obstacles and self-doubt and loathing kind of just lends itself to, it can either break you or it can make you stronger. And fortunately for me, every time I've lost, I've come back stronger than ever. So I do feel like this period now, before I retire, is my best years. I'm in the prime of my career. I'm in the prime, like, conditioning, experience. Everything is just hitting a sweet point. I'm 33, and mate, this is going to be my best leg, especially with all the things that I've changed and adapted and gotten better at since my losses. So my mentality when it comes to the belt doesn't mean anything to me. It's just that it is a symbol for being the best in the world. My goal has always been about being the best in the world. And I 100% wholeheartedly believe that I'm the best in the world. But I need that belt to tell everybody else, so that everybody else understands that as well. So it is a progression for me to win fights, to open up those doors, to getting that shot, to getting back the belt, to achieve, the over-ending goal.
So as we're reflecting on your career, obviously you had 2 great battles with Yoel Romero. Not only did you fight him twice, but you fought him back to back. And I'm just curious now, because I got the chance to talk to you. What was it like standing in the octagon for 50 minutes with a monster of a human being as Yoel Romero? How do you reflect on those fights? Yeah,
those fights were crazy, especially that second one. And what's one of the craziest things about it was like the Yoel that I fought the first time opposed to the Yoel I fought the second time were two different people. Like it was weird. It was weird, man. And that second fight with Yoel burnt me out. Like that's how hard the fight was. It burnt me out. And to be fair, in hindsight, and hindsight's always 20/20, but in hindsight, I should have had a bit of a break after that fight. But I wasn't in the position to do so. I wasn't in the clear-headed space to do so. So what happened after that. But they were tough fights, man.
Yeah, because you also mentioned that every time you hit Yoel Romero, your hands were hurting.
Yeah. Well, in that second fight, I broke my hand in the first round. I broke my right hand, and it was just a slugfest after that.
We mentioned it as our at the end of our episodes with the weekly reviews. We always choose a fight we want to mention to our viewers to watch it. And last week we had, because of your match, we chose you versus Yoel Romero, the second fight, because I think in the middleweight division it's one of the sickest fights I've seen between two fighters going at it for a championship. Even though he was not fighting for the championship, but
yeah,
still.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It was tough. I'm glad at least it was a good watch. It makes me feel a little better.
Nah, definitely.
So you said there were two different people, two different Joels. Like what was the difference?
Mate, like watch the fights. Yoel was moving differently. He was still trying to offensively wrestle. You know, he was fighting completely differently. Whereas in the second fight, he stood upright, had his hands up, and just wanted to bang. It was a very different approach to the fight.
Do you think also when you look back at the moment you stepped into the middleweight division in the UFC and the current middleweight division, there's a difference in levels between the fighters? Would you say the fighters now are better than back then?
It's hard to say whether they're better. I do think just in general, the skill of MMA is rising. Like kids are starting MMA earlier. So the generation you see now, which are 10 years younger than myself, have had 10 years more to train before entering the UFC. I feel like the skill levels definitely gotten bigger. Whether it's better or not, it's hard to say because you can't conclusively you can't fight the old heads with the young guys because they're not who they were. But I remember when I was going up through the middleweight division, nobody wanted to fight Jacare Souza. No one wanted to fight Romero. Derek Brunson was starching people over and over. Like those guys were nightmares for people. And obviously, as the years went by, things changed. But at the time, they were scary people.
I think it's time to do some listener questions.
Yeah, we have some questions from our listeners, which we wanted to ask.
You know what's crazy? Let's but like, if you think about it, when I was fighting, dude, like, you know who the gatekeepers were? They were like Dan Henderson.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
We also had because we are a Dutch MMA podcast, and when we look at the Dutch scene, we would say one of the greatest Dutch fighters in MMA is Gegard Mousasi, who also fought in the middleweight division. Dude, I think you were both going at it. Who would be fighting for the championship at that moment? But we also discussed it with Gegard.
Yeah, well, yeah, Mousasi was phenomenal, dude, phenomenal. And then like this was when Chris Weidman was champion. And he was like running through people still, like smashing people. Anderson Silva was still smashing people. Luke Rockhold was still, undefeated, untested at that point. So he was doing his thing. It was just a different era,
I think it's amazing to look back at it and at your career. But like I said, we had some questions from our listeners, which we wanted to ask you. The first one is, what was your toughest moment throughout your career? Yeah, up until now.
It's obviously has to be my losses, right? I think losing to Adesanya, losing the belt to Adesanya in home soil was rough. You know, it was like one of the biggest crowds in the world ever, and I got stopped in front of them all, so that sucked. That was a rough one. I had some time off after that. The DDP loss was massive for me because, like I said, it wasn't so much that I lost; it was more about me feeling like I let myself down, like not having a grip on my own mentality into that fight and whatnot, and that shook me probably more than the Izzy fight, to be honest.
I can get that.
Quick question. Speaking about DDP and Izzy, do you have a preference from who wins the fight, or you just want to fight wherever the champion is?
I want to fight DDP again, like I do, more so than Izzy. Don't get me wrong, Izzy's still on the list, but I want to fight DDP again. Like I said, that loss to him shook me.
I think it shook a lot of people. So we hope to see that fight again. Also, this question I liked a lot because what's the biggest difference between your first pro fights and the place where you're at now? So not only technical, but what's the biggest difference between those moments?
Oh, everything. Everything. There's too many things to list. But I guess, you know, to encompass all of it, I'll say experience, because yeah, that's changed everything.
This is a question we ask everyone. What's your dream fight? So past, present, anywhere, anytime, any place. Who would you want to fight if you look back at your career and into the future or whatever?
I don't really have dream fights, like really. If I'm getting paid my purse, then I want an easy fight. I want to fight like a flyweight, dude. Like just have a super huge advantage and then just get paid, right?
Yeah,
so yeah, like a debut new guy that probably shouldn't be getting a debut featherweight. I reckon that'd be sick. But if I have to give a serious answer of a fight that I would have liked to have happened, is the fight with GSP that time. I would have liked that fight just to test myself against, you know, one of the greats.
Yeah, we also had George in the podcast. Amazing guy. I think it also would have been an amazing fight. Mm-hmm. This is a question which I'm curious at. Is in what way do you adjust your camp to your opponent? Like, do you have a basis and then from that on you adjust it a bit, or is it always the same, or is every camp different?
Well, we have a foundation of training that we you know keep consistent, but my coaches manipulate the training to kind of focus on key points with depending on who I'm fighting. So like key weaknesses or key strengths, we work on certain things.
Okay, good to hear. And the last question from our listeners is, who has been your toughest opponent? I would think it's Yoel Romero if I heard you talk, but who would you say is your toughest opponent?
Well, I think I'd be remiss not to say the guys that beat me. Like those guys are pretty tough. The second Romero fight was the hardest one I've had, you know, that I've gotten through. That was for sure. That burnt me out. That was a very hard fight. Adesanya is very hard to fight too, though. He's so slippery and like hard to get your hands on.
But I think it's also a question you probably answered it a lot. But is it what I find strange is I don't see a lot of people trying to wrestle Izzy. Whilst you have great wrestling and you've done it against him, but I think is it something like people want to test themselves standing up against Izzy?
He's tricky to take down because his spacing is very good, and because he's a taller guy, it lends himself to like he's got some certain advantages with defending, but mainly it's his spacing. His spacing is really good. It's hard to get into a position to take him down.
Okay, Robert, before we let you go, I have two quick questions about I want to talk some wrestling and grappling with you, because I read online, I actually heard in the podcast too, that you were able to represent your country in wrestling, freestyle wrestling.
Mhm.
but you chose not to because of the your MMA career. Can you
Yeah.
elaborate a bit on that story?
So I made the Australian Commonwealth Games team for wrestling, but my title defense popped up at the same time, so I had to make a choice. And UFC is my career and it's what I do. It's how I earn money. So it wasn't too hard of a choice, but that was the end of my wrestling kind
Mhm.
of competitive career anyway.
Gotcha. And we also have seen you in a couple of grappling matches here and there.
Mhm.
You have another Australian, Craig Jones. He's doing the CGI. Have you heard about that tournament?
I haven't heard too much about it, but I know it's
Oh.
on the same day as like the invitationals.
Yeah. So, do you think that's something you would do further in your career, like the grappling matches, or is it something you've done and not really interested in?
I'm sure. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure I'll move into like some no-gi like post UFC because like I'm a competitive guy. I can't see myself training without the idea of competing, like putting myself into a test at some point.
Gotcha. All right, man.
We always end the podcast with two questions. One of them is which fighter at the moment within the UFC you enjoy watching? Which one you would say I enjoy watching him or she fight, whatever. So who do you enjoy watching?
You know what? I'm going to say my teammate, Jacob Malkoon. I like watching him fight, obviously.
That's great. And we always end with what's something you would advise to our listeners, even if it's in life or as up and coming fighters or just in general?
Honestly, just stay off the drink. Like, stay away from it. It is just, yeah, it just cripples you. It does. It cripples you. Yeah.
A lot of people need to hear that, man. So,
I think there are some fighters who need to hear that. But Robert, thank you very much for your time. We will drop the episode tomorrow. So tomorrow 6 in the evening, I think Dutch time. So that's somewhere in the night.
No, thank you very much for having me, mate. Take it easy.
Enjoy your time with your family. Enjoy your time off, and we can't wait to see you in the octagon again, man.
No, thank you.
Appreciate it,
boys. Take it easy.
Thank you very much.